So today's lesson is called Two-Step Equations with Fractions and Decimals. So by the end of today's lesson, we'll be able to solve any sort of two-step equation that involves with fractions or decimals. Now go and write down example number 1. Now, before, the way we were solving these, remember, we were always doing PEMDAS backwards. So that meant that we had to look to see if we had any addition or subtraction. Now don't forget, our goal is still to get this x by itself, so I focus. I have my subtraction of 5. Now how do I undo my subtraction of 5? Through adding 5 to both sides. So I add 5 to both sides. Now my 5's are going to cancel out. My 2/3 x is going to come on down. Whoops, that's a bad x. Then I now have to add this fraction, this whole number. So I have 7/2 plus 5. So how do I change this whole number into a fraction? Remember, we can take that whole number and we can put it over 1. Now, how in the world do I add these fractions? I got a 2 in denominator here, 1 in denominator in there. Remember, I need to find a least common denominator. So between 2 and 1, 2 is going to be my least common denominator. Since I have a 2 right here, this fraction is good to go. But the 5, I got to change. So how do I change a 1 into a 2? By multiplying it by 2. But if I do the bottom, I must do the top. So now I have 7/2, that hasn't changed, plus, now 5 times 2 is 10, over 2. Now I can add my fractions together. That will give me 17 over 2. So now I have 17 over 2. Now, I've undid my addition and subtraction, so that's done. Now I need to focus on my multiplication and addition. So right now I have 2/3 times x is equal to 17 over 2. Now what have I taught you that you can get rid of this fraction? We can multiply it by its reciprocal. Now why do I multiply it by its reciprocal? Because my 3's end up cross-canceling, same with my 2's. I now have my x all by myself, which was my goal. But remember, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So multiply this by 3 over 2 as well. And we take a look. Can I cross-cancel anything? So I look at my 17 and my 2. Can I cross-cancel anything? No, I can't. Then I take a look at my 3 and my 2. Can I cross-cancel anything? No, I cannot. Since I can't cross-cancel anything, I just multiply straight across. So let's see, 17 times 3, 1 is 2, gives me 51. So I get 51 over 4. Bring down my equal sign, bring down my x, and that is going to be my answer. Now, I think this is kind of difficult because we have to find a least common denominator, we got a super big fraction, and our answer is kind of ugly. So I'm going to show you an easier way of how we can solve these types of problems. Now go and write down example number 2. Now, remember this equal sign. The equal sign means this is balanced, that this equation is even, they are equal. So whatever I do to one side, if I multiply this side by 2, I have to multiply this side by 2. So what we can do actually now, since we know that this is a balanced, even, equal, that whatever we do to one side, we can do the other, what we're going to do is we're going to end up getting rid of our denominators. Now how are we going to do this? Well, I'm going to find the least common multiple between 5 and 3. So we look at 5 and 3. Do they have anything in common? No, they do not. So we can just multiply them together. 5 times 3 gives me 15. So I know my least common multiple is 15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this side by 15 and this side by 15. I want you to watch and see what happens. Now, I take a look. I got a variable, I have parentheses, I have a number out in front. So what do I need to do? I need to do the box method. So I put my 15 and I put my 1/5 y plus 3. So now let's take a look. I have 15 times 1/5 y. Remember, I can put a 1 under my 15. If you take a look, can I cross-cancel these two? Yes, I can. So let's cross-cancel them. I'm going to divide this one by 5, divide this one by 5. These 5's cancel out. This cancels out into a 3, so my box becomes 3y. And then see 15 times 3, let's do some math. 15 times 3 gives me 45. Remember, it's going to be positive 45, so I have a plus 45. Now, let's worry about the other side. Now, once again, remember, I can put any whole number, put a 1 underneath it, and if you take a look, I can cross-cancel these two values. Let's divide this by 3, divide that by 3. Those cancel out. This simplifies into 5. 5 times 2 is going to give me 10. So now, let's pull everything outside of my boxes now. So I have 3y plus 45 is equal to 10. Now I think that looks a lot nicer, a lot easier to work with. I'm no longer dealing with these fractions. But still, how are we going to solve this? Remember, my goal is still to isolate the variable, and we are doing PEMDAS backwards. So I need to take a look. Is there anything I can add and subtract? I have my adding of 45, or my positive 45. So I undo addition with subtraction. But remember, I have to subtract on both sides. And I seem to be running out of room, so I'm going to move my math over here. So my 3y doesn't change. That's where my 3y comes from. My 45s are going to cancel out. Don't forget your equal sign. And now I have 45 minus 10, which will give me 35. But because my 45 is a negative, it's a bigger number, it should be a negative 35. So I did my addition and subtraction. Let's take a look at my multiplication division. Now I'm multiplying 3 times y. What's opposite of multiplication? Division, so we divide 3 on both sides. My 3's cancel out. My y is now isolated all by itself. So y is equal to negative 35. Well, it's a bad negative. Negative 35 all over 3. And that is going to be your answer. Now go write down example number 3 and go to try to solve this one on your own. If you were doing this at home, you should have gotten W is equal to 74. Now go write down example number 4 and go to try to solve it on your own. If you were solving this at home, you should have gotten 7 halves or 3 1/2. So go and write down example number 5. Now with example number 5, now we are dealing with some decimals. But remember, our goal is still the same. Our goal is still to isolate a variable. And how are we going to do that? By doing PEMDAS backwards. So what I need to undo first? I need to undo addition and subtraction first. So take a look. I am subtracting 8. So how do I undo subtraction? By adding 8 on both sides. So my 8's are going to cancel out. My 0.04x is not going to change. Now, I have to add 8 and 2.5, or 0.25. How am I going to do this? Remember, 8 I can make into a decimal by putting decimal behind it, 2 zeros, adding, remember, decimals we need to line up, 2, 5, and if I add them together, I get 8.25, so I get 8 or 8.25. Now, I've done my addition and subtraction. What's next? My multiplication or division. So let's see. I have 0.04 times x. So how do I undo multiplication? Through division. So let's divide by 0.04, 0.04. So these are going to cancel out. Let's get rid of all of them. So my x is now all by itself. Let's bring down the x. Now I get to do some lovely division. So let's set this up. I have my 0.04, my 8.25, but don't forget, remember when we're dividing by decimals, I can't have a decimal here, so move it once, twice. Can't have a decimal here, once, twice. And remember, I've moved my decimal, so my decimal would go right up there. So now let's do some division. Let's see, 4 times 2 is going to give me 8. I bring down my 2. Now 4 can't go into 2, so I'll bring down a 0. Let's bring down the 5. Oh, sorry, bring up a 0. Now let's see, 4 to 25 goes into 6 times. So subtract that by 24. I get 1 as a remainder. And bring down a 0. Let's see, how many times does 4 go into 10? It goes into it 2 times. 1 second. Sorry, I had to move it over and make a little bit more room. So let's see. goes into it 2 times. Oh, so subtract by 8. That'll bring me 20. I can add another 0. And 4 goes into 25 times. So my answer ends up being 206.25. And that will be your answer. Because if I subtract 20 down here, I just Now I'm going to write down example number 6. Now another way you can deal with decimals, if you don't like seeing all these different decimals, is you can get rid of them. Now just like before when we were using that least common multiple to get rid of our fractions, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a look at our placeholders. So I have 8 in the tens place, a 1 in the tens place, and a 3 in the tens place. So now if they're in the tens place and if I multiply them by 10, watch and see what happens to my decimals. Now remember, whatever I do to one side, if I multiply this side by 10, I have to multiply this side by 10 as well. Now let's focus on this side first. So if I have negative 8.3 times 10, and I get 0, 0, bring down another 0, I get 3 and I get 8. So I have 830. But what did I forget? I forgot my decimal. I have to move it once. Decimal there, move it once, so I end up getting 83. So if you notice, my decimal has disappeared, so I have a nice whole number. So now let's see what happens when I deal with the other side. Now remember, I see a variable and I see parentheses, so I'm going to be using the box method. So let's see, 10. So I have negative 0.8k, negative 3.1. So watch and see when we do some multiplication. So 0.8 times 10, I get 0, 0, 0, 8, 0. Whoops, bad 8. Oh, you can't see that. Sorry, 1 second. Let me move that up for you. Then if you notice, I need to move the decimal how many times? Once. Take my decimal, move it once, and end up with just 8. But don't forget it's going to be a negative, and don't forget your k. So if you notice, when I multiply by 10, I end up moving that decimal once over. So what do you think the answer will be when I multiply negative 3.1 times 10? The answer is going to be negative 31. So now, if I bring it outside the box, I now have negative 8k minus 31, what was it, that 3, is equal to 83. I have nice whole numbers. So, using PEMDAS, but backwards, we are going to go ahead and solve this problem. So go ahead and finish solving this problem. Let's see what you get. Now, I totally forgot my negative, so now go ahead and try it on your own and see what happens. And if you were doing it this home, you should have gotten 6.5 as your answer. So I like a 2-sentence summary. What did you learn today? We learned how to approach fractions and decimals in 2-step equations by using a least common multiple to get rid of either the fractions denominators or the decimals.